We've got breaking news out of college football where the latest AP poll has been released. The top 6, no change. Number 1, Ohio State. Number 2, Indiana. Number 3, Texas A&M. All receiving first place votes. The Big 12 has a season high 5 teams in the top 25 this week, with number 10 BYU leading the pack. So let's take a look at the full AP poll. Shout out to Vanderbilt, up 1 spot after a big win at home over Mizzou. So there's BYU there. They're tied with Miami for that number 10 spot. Notre Dame, no change for them on a bye. Tennessee and Louisville up 3 spots. Also Cincinnati going up 4 spots with a big game against Utah coming up this weekend. Texas moving up 2 spots after winning a squeaker in overtime against Mississippi State. 5 more teams here on this list. The aforementioned Utah went from unranked to ranked at number 24. And Memphis, looking like they are right on track to punch their ticket to the college football playoff after a win over South Florida, went from unranked to ranked. Michigan up 4 spots into number 21. So there you have it. The new poll is out. Let's react to it by welcoming in Damien Harris, Brad Crawford joining us remotely. Let's start with Texas A&M. They did get 1 first place vote, but man, that was an impressive win in Death Valley at night over LSU. What's their case to be number 1?
Well, look at what they did last night. I mean, LSU, we were having conversations about them, talking about how they were down and away and how nothing was going right, yet they had only lost 1 football game. So they were still very much in the mix. Well, here comes Texas A&M, here comes Marcel Reed, here comes Kevin Elko and this defense, and they just absolutely manhandled LSU from start to finish. There were times where LSU kept it competitive, but man, this Texas A&M football team, they've got one of the best receiving corps in college football that we're not talking about. The development of Marcel Reed, the fact that they held LSU to the amount of points that they did, which wasn't very many. I mean, they made a clear case to be one of the better teams in the country, and they're putting a lot of people on notice. If you are not aware of Texas A&M right now, go ahead and pick us up on your radar, because we're in the driver's seat to make an SEC championship. We're in the driver's seat to get to the college football playoff. What we saw in Death Valley last night, that is the case for Texas A&M as the best team in the country. 49
points in Death Valley at night. Brad, I remember a time where it was just an automatic victory for the Tigers at home, and they got embarrassed.
They sure did. And to Damien's point, I think there's a case for Texas A&M to move up in these rankings, but let's not discredit what Ohio State and Indiana have done either these last 8 or 9 weeks. You know, we worried about Texas A&M's defense coming into last night's game at LSU. Played well in the second half, dump truck the Tigers there. But Ohio State and Indiana don't have the same issues A&M has defensively. Now, that said, I think A&M clearly joined a upper tier of elites in college football. There's 3 teams right now, Ohio State, Indiana, A&M included, that are just head and shoulders above the rest. And as for LSU, Emily, it's looking rough for Brian Kelly. But you see A&M's schedule right there. That win at Notre Dame in September with Marcel Reed leading that fourth quarter comeback, that was the start of something special this season for Mike Elko, who has the SEC's lone remaining unbeaten here heading into Week 10.
I feel the need to point out that Indiana had themselves a nice Saturday as well.
Did they?
A 50-point win over UCLA. Of course, the Buckeyes still stay at number 1. They were on a bye week, but with a big game against Penn State, maybe not as big as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, definitely not now. I do want to say, though, I agree 100% with Brad. Although I became an Aggie for a second. I gave him the thumbs up. But Ohio State is the best team in college football based on what we've seen up until this point. I mean, you've got a guy in Julian Sain who's leading the country in completion percentage, a top 4 offense in the country, the number 1 defense in the country, and they don't look like anybody has competed with them outside of Texas in Week 1. So I think that Brad is absolutely right. Although Texas A&M, they added themselves into that upper echelon of college football, all roads go through Columbus right now.
Yeah, just asked you to make the case. You don't have to
right. I made such a good case. Brad was like, wait, hold on now, hold on, wait.
Let's remind the people, there's some 2 pretty good teams that are ranked ahead of them. We have to go to the unfortunate side of that game, though, and that is, of course, LSU. And Brad, you mentioned a tough day for Brian Kelly. Maybe some staff members might be having an even tougher day. But when it comes to this LSU Tigers team, they've dropped out of the top 25. We calling curtains on the college football playoff?
Oh, certainly college football playoff. This season is over for Brian Kelly. And we called this a few weeks ago after the Tigers beat South Carolina 20-10, despite 2 goal line turnovers and bad play offensively. Scoring points has been an issue all year long for Brian Kelly. Losses to Vanderbilt and Texas A&M have transpired these last 2 weeks. Now you have a preseason top 10 team, Emily, that is out of the AP poll entirely. There's been a lot of smoke last night and today about potential staff changes coming ahead of this open date pre-Alabama. But I'm sorry, Brian Kelly's not going to be able to play scapegoat in this one after he told all of us over the summer it's college football playoff or bust. This team is 5-3 after 8 games and just a shell of what they looked like offensively last season.
Listen, I know where this conversation is supposed to go. We're supposed to talk about LSU and their college football playoffs. Hope the curtain is closed on that. Can we finally close the curtain on the Brian Kelly era in Baton Rouge? Because let me read something to you. LSU coaching records in their first 4 years, and this is the last 4 head coaches. Nick Saban, 39-13. He had an SEC championship and a national championship. Les Miles, 42-11. He also had an SEC championship and a national championship. Ed Ogeron, guess what? 41-9, an SEC championship, a national championship. Brian Kelly, 34-14 with absolutely nothing to show for it. Not as much as a conference championship, playoff championship, absolutely nothing. And on top of that, let's talk about what's going on in the program right now. On top of wins and losses, what about the fact that he fired one of Brian Kelly's first moves as head coach at LSU is to fire the string staff that, by the way, they're at Texas A&M now. And why all of a sudden, in the last 2 times that Texas A&M has played LSU, in the second half alone, they've beat up on them 60-6. Why is that? Because they're the more conditioned team. They're the tougher team. They're built to last for a full 60 minutes, what LSU clearly is not. We've seen that. What about that? What about the times when every time we sit and listen to Brian Kelly at a press conference, it's never I, it's never me, it's they, it's y'all, it's everybody else. Even looking at the relationships that he's had with his players where he's telling guys, you're uncoachable, you're not doing that. Watch Garrett Nussmeier and the way that he shrugged off Brian Kelly when he got pulled last night. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if I haven't said enough, please say more, because there are more than enough glaring reasons to move on from Brian Kelly. We sat up here and we made the case for James Franklin, Billy Napier, talking about teams that are in your conference that are not as good as you, have started to surpass you. Well, what did Texas A&M do last night? They separated themselves from LSU because they've done it twice now. They didn't just do it last year. They didn't just do it this year. They did it in Kyle Field. They did it in Baton Rouge. The proof is in the pudding. Brian Kelly needs to be out at LSU.
It is particularly damning, too, based on who they lost to those last 2 games. You lose to Clark Lee and to Mike Elko, which are 2 former defensive coordinators at Notre Dame under Brian Kelly.
Hold on, I'm so glad that you just brought up Notre Dame, because I had something else that I wanted to say, and it almost slipped my mind, but you just reminded me. What about when Brian Kelly left Notre Dame, Brad Crawford, and he said, I want to go to a place, an environment where I have the resources to compete for national championship? Well, guess what? You went somewhere else. You can go anywhere in the state of Louisiana and shake a tree and get a 5-star to fall out. You've got the players. You've assembled your roster how you wanted. You were supposed to have your quarterback. You were supposed to have this defense. You have nothing to show for it. So what is it going to take? We have to gift wrap a national championship and just deliver Brian Kelly and LSU to get there? If it's not the case, then they have nothing.
Brad, can anything be fixed for this season? You're calling curtains on their college football playoff, on the season, everything. Is there any move that can be made for LSU, or we're just done?
I mean, I don't think moving on from Joe Sloan as OC is going to fix things. I don't think beating Alabama in 2 weeks is going to fix things. I don't think that's going to happen, by the way. And just to Damien's point, throughout the offseason, LSU put all of its resources in the middle of the table to go after a playoff spot. We heard about the 5-year losing streak in season openers. Brian Kelly finally beat Clemson and erased that skid in August. But look, Clemson's a disaster this season. So that what even a good win turned out to be. We should have seen the writing on the wall a few weeks ago, Emily, when Brian Kelly went after that reporter post-game for simply asking a question, why isn't this offense as good as it was last year, much less 2 years ago when Jaden Daniels won a Heisman Trophy with Joe Sloan as his quarterback's coach. It might not be his assistant coaches. The buck stops with the head coach, and right now Brian Kelly's not worth the $10 million he's getting.
Yeah, we talked to Patrick Peterson, of course, an LSU great, on our college football pregame show yesterday, and I asked him, I mean, just how exhausting is this era? Because you have, like you said, a Heisman trophy-winning quarterback, but not the defense. Now you have the defense and not the offense. That has been the Brian Kelly experience so far. But there are some other teams that we need to talk about, particularly in the SEC. You've got Oklahoma and Missouri still in this top 20, in the top 25. But Brad, they're on the outside looking in at this point, and as far as the college football playoff is concerned. Which team of those two do you maybe have some more confidence in to potentially win out?
I don't think either team wins out, but Oklahoma has a schedule that is, they have opportunities ahead, right? I mean, they've got 4 ranked teams left. LSU would have been a 5th, but they fell out of that after that loss. You see the schedule there for Oklahoma. If they're able to beat Tennessee, Alabama, Missouri, finish 9-3 even, a 3rd loss for Oklahoma, that would still be 5 ranked wins this season, better than any resume nationally. That being said, I don't think Oklahoma or Missouri is getting to the playoff, especially the Tigers after losing Bo Pribula to that leg injury. That was a cataclysmic injury for Mizzou. You consider that now there's 2 quarterbacks, including Sam Horn, out for the year. So Oklahoma needed to take care of business against Ole Miss at home, and they just didn't get it done. And now we see Murderers Row coming in November for Brent Venables.
Yeah, I agree with Brad. I mean, when you look at that schedule, they do have the opportunities. There's games here and games there. And to Brad's point, if they win a couple of those down the stretch, they finish the season with 5 ranked teams, or with 5 ranked wins, excuse me. And granted, you might not get to the college football playoffs, but that's a lot to build on going into next year. And between these 2 teams, I have to have more confidence in Oklahoma can get it done, just because when you look at the 2 teams, one has their starting quarterback, one does not. Now, granted, John Mateer, he has dealt with injuries, and he's still trying to work some of that rust off. But, you know, you have to be more confident in him working his way back, again, getting back comfortable with his receivers, the offense. And again, this Oklahoma defense they're nasty. Yeah. And Brent Venables likes them this way. And, you know, for Missouri, they're a good team. I like what Eli Drinkowitz has done. I like the way that he's built this program. You've got a guy like Ahmad Hardy, who is the best running back in all of college football. But without Bo Pribula, without your starting quarterback, Ahmad Hardy is not going to be able to carry them to the college football playoffs by himself.
Yeah, I asked you guys which one, but it sounds like consensus is C, none of the above. Making the college football playoff.
yeah. Can we take that?
Yes, that works too. I didn't give that option initially, but we'll take it now. Let's go to the Commodores, though, up to number 9 in the AP Top 25 poll. A win, I'm not going to call it an impressive win over Missouri because, man, the Tigers did everything they possibly could to try and lose that football game. But that was a big win for Vanderbilt at home, especially with everything surrounding that. Damien, what did we learn about the Commodores?
Well, I think that they separated themselves and they entered that upper echelon of the SEC. And I think going into this game, these 2 teams are very evenly matched. Their style of play, granted, one had Diego Pavia, the other doesn't. That is a big difference. But they both play well defensively. They both try to run the football. And their records were similar. The way that they played was similar. And I went into this game saying the team that wins, they separate themselves into the upper echelon, the upper class of the SEC. And the team that loses, they go down. Now, if you're Missouri, not only did you lose, but again, you lost your starting quarterback in Bo Pribula. So that obviously moves you down the SEC pecking order as it stands. But, you know, Vanderbilt football team, they're good. Yeah. They're gritty. They're exactly what Diego Pavia is, and that's the culture that they have. They're gritty, they're tough, they're fiery, and they're hard to kill. I mean, I know Kirby Smart, that's his mantra at Georgia right now, but as we've seen with this Vanderbilt team, they do not go down easy. No game. They don't go into any game as the underdogs, as, you know, looking to upset somebody. They go into every single game demanding their respect. And they've done that. And now I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but if they finish their season the way that they would hope to, they have a clear spot or a clear path to the SEC championship and being a representative in the college football playoffs.
Yeah, I was going to say this is the first week in all season I've put Vanderbilt in our projected playoff bracket at CBS Sports, and it's because they've got 3 ranked wins and likely going to split the last 2 games against ranked teams in November. They've got a road trip to Texas coming up next weekend, and they play inside Neyland Stadium, Emily, during rivalry weekend. That could be for the playoffs last at-large spot between Tennessee and Vanderbilt. I'm looking forward to that game. Diego Pavia, let's scale back the Heisman stuff right now because he's just not producing good enough numbers, in my opinion, to get a lion's share of that vote. But as a team, and Pavia is leading the way, Vanderbilt is definitely a playoff contender, and they have done it against ranked teams. They beat South Carolina by 24 points back in September. They played Alabama. I know the final score didn't indicate how close that game was, But had it not been for Pavia's 2 red zone turnovers in that game, maybe Vanderbilt's unbeaten right now. So Texas and Tennessee, I think if Vanderbilt splits those last 2 games and finishes 10-2, Clark leads in the playoff.
I'm glad he put a pause on the Diego Pavia Heisman conversation right there, because I didn't want to have to, Emily Proud. I didn't want to have to do it. Thank you, Brad. Kudos to you. You're a smart man.
This was a 3-3 football game at the half. It was not a beautiful offense by any means, but as you both mentioned, good teams win football games.
That's right.
Vanderbilt is a good football team. How about in the G5, USF Memphis? We all circled this game as a potential play-in as it pertains to the college football playoff, and Memphis coming away with the comeback victory. So, Brad, I'll ask you this. Do they have to win the American to get in? How secure is this Tigers bid for the playoff?
They do have to win the American. I think the American Conference champion is going to get into the playoff. Navy is still unbeaten there. Tulane has a shot. Obviously, USF, despite the loss to Memphis, you can't count them out because they've beaten so many ranked teams as a G5. I know Boise State's gotten some love lately, but they've got 2 losses. This is going to come out of the American. The winner of that is going to get the 12 seed. And look, I had shoveled dirt on Memphis's grave last week after losing to UAB. So to think they come back home, erase a double-digit deficit to beat Alex Golesh and the Bulls. And hats off to Ryan Silverfield, who's likely going to be a big-time head coach next season somewhere else if he keeps it up at Memphis.
I like Memphis, I do, but I like Navy just a little bit more. What Blake Horvath has been doing, running the football, throwing the football. Listen, service academy teams, you can never count it to just go and beat them. And they've been playing very, very well right now. They sit atop of the American Conference. I think it's going to be one of these 2 teams. I know Tulane, they're good. I don't think they're on the level of Memphis. They're on the same level as Navy. I think it's going to be one of those teams. They'll be the American champion and the representative of the group of 5.
I do need to point out, as the standings are right now.
Notre Dame. Yeah.
Yep.
Navy's Notre Dame coming up too, so they could essentially not win the American, but knock Notre Dame out the playoff.
Come on. Come on.
That's what's crazy is that this Navy schedule is very backloaded, and so we haven't seen them necessarily against the top talent in the American and in general. Again, you have that annual game against Notre Dame. So still a lot to be decided, but do not forget, we are less than 2 weeks away from getting the initial college football playoff rankings. That is on Election Day, November 4th. Another date to keep an eye on, December 20th, is when the first round of the college football playoff starts. You've got quarters on New Year's Eve and day, semis January 8th and 9th, and the national championship is set for January 19th.